So I have a 3-year-old, and she asks questions. Jesus died on the cross for me, Daddy? And I'll say, yes, he did die on the cross for you. And then she'll say, why? Because he loves you. Why?
Yeah.
Why does he love me? Now, I could say, well, because he just does. And that'd be true. But recently I learned what my answer to that question is. I tell her, I say, honey, because he's good.
Yeah.
That's just who he is. He loves you because he's good. I love that I know I can say that to anybody. You're listening to If That Makes Sense. It's Family Life's original podcast about life following Jesus. My name's Tim. I'm in Family Life's radio department.
Hi, my name is Hope, and I'm in the Performing Arts department.
Hi, I'm Dylan. I am also in the Performing Arts department.
It's so great to have you here with us, Dylan.
Thanks.
Yeah. So we are still at the Last Supper following Jesus and his disciples. And the last episode, just to kind of sum up where we ended, was Judas just left the group. He just went out. As we learned, that's like a simple phrase, but it's also kind of like a big spiritual dark phrase too, that he like went out, not just from the place where they were eating, but really from the presence of God, which is sad and scary and pitiable. Man, I do recommend listening to that episode too. But if you're here, we're glad you're listening to this one. We're going to start reading in John chapter 13, doing verses 31 through the end of the chapter, just a couple of verses here today. And Dylan, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Therefore, when he had gone out, Jesus said, "Now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and will glorify him immediately. Little children, I am with you a little while longer. You will seek me, and as I said to the Jews, now I also say to you, where I am going, you cannot come.
A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another."
Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, where are you going?" Jesus answered him, "Where I am going, you cannot follow me now, but you will follow afterward." Peter said to him, "Lord, why can I not follow you now? I will lay down my life for you." Jesus answered, "Will you lay down your life for me? Truly, truly, I say to you, the rooster will not crow till you have denied me 3 times. Yeah, so there we have verse 13. That's the end of chapter 13. That's the end of chapter 13. Just like a really quick observation, like the way it ends, it's just sad.
Yeah.
And it's weird to pity your savior, to like pity might be the wrong word, but like to feel bad for what Jesus went through, because it's like, well, he's God, he's in so much, he's in control. But you're like, he just had one friend he knows is betraying him.
Yeah.
And then this other friend he knows is about to deny him.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I think, after having read this story, however many times I've been a Christian for most of my life, and I always come to this part where Jesus is like, well, will you really lay down your life for me? Because you're about to deny me. And it sort of, in my humanness, feels like Jesus just kind of snapped at him. And he was like, you stink. And you're going to be a big meanie to me. That's what But I know that there must be something more to why Jesus has decided to say this out loud, even if it's not just the fulfillment of prophecy and all of those things of like the rooster crowing before him, which I don't even fully know, like, how is that prophetic? Is that prophetic? I don't even know. But it just is so, I don't know. How do you feel about that? Because I know I would feel horrible if Jesus said that to me. What's the point of him saying it other than to admonish him for something he's going to do anyway?
Well, I guess for starters, giving context later in the Gospels and also before it, we definitely know that Peter can sometimes be a rather brash individual in his actions. And so, thinking about when he goes, let's see, when he goes, Lord, why can I not follow you right now? I will lay down my life for you. It definitely feels like he is sort of expressing willingness and eagerness, but also not having the foresight to really comprehend what where I go, you cannot follow me means. And so it almost, I'm wondering if Jesus isn't using this to admonish Peter for being willing to follow, but he's using this as an admonishment for being prideful. Being the person to say, I will follow you, even if they don't. Obviously, it doesn't say even if they don't, at least in the version that I'm reading here. But it almost sounds like, Peter's trying to interject because he feels like as a disciple, it is his duty to do so. And he takes a lot of pride in being one of the disciples of Christ. And Jesus says, look, this being a disciple isn't something that you go to other people and you flaunt about. This is something where, this is a calling that you are asked to be humble about, and you aren't really understanding this at this point. And so by this, I know that for a fact, in order to save your own skin, you're going to deny me. And that's just how things are going to happen. And, because you are prideful and because you are stubborn, this is the only way that you're going to learn that.
I like that point, Dylan, about we've already kind of seen Peter's character. And I don't mean just to put his character down. I mean, we know the kind of guy he is. And if we do, of course Jesus did. Jesus had lived with him in public ministry for 3 years by now at this point. So, even in this episode of The Last Supper, he's already had to tell Peter, slow, no, bring it down, bring it down.
Because he's an eager beaver.
Yeah. Oh, he is. Is it Peter the Beaver Peter? There already is the foot washing. Remember that happened earlier? He washes their feet, and Peter's like, oh, you're not going to wash my feet, Jesus. And Jesus is like, I have to, or you have no share with me. And then Peter's like, well, no, then wash all of me. And Jesus is like, that's not what we're talking about here.
He's a very extreme guy.
He's extreme. He's also pretty literal a lot of times.
Yes.
He is.
And so I think that brashness that you talk about, Dylan, we know Jesus isn't, it's hard to hear even what he says to him. You're right, Hope. But we know he's not being petty. Jesus isn't being petty, playground petty. You're being mean. Yeah, he's not like that.
No.
He's not saying you're going to be mean to me. So man. I think for one thing, it's really interesting that he is doing. You talked about prophecy, Hope. He is prophesying. That's kind of interesting. He's making his own prophecy. He's saying this is what's going to happen. And I've got to wonder how much hope that gave to Peter when he remembered it, because we know what's going to happen. Peter's going to remember when he denies Christ. These words are going to come back to him, and he's going to remember. And it's going to crush him at first, because he's going to think, oh my gosh, Jesus said this was going to happen. I was going to do this, and then I did it. I betrayed him. But also, Peter's going to know, wait, Jesus loved me. Jesus chose me, even though he knew ahead of time that I was going to make such a big mistake. What if Peter, this is imagination, all right? I'm venturing into the realms of imagination here. But what if Peter at some point were tempted to wonder if he were as bad as Judas? Judas gave it all up. We saw what happened. He betrayed Jesus. I betrayed Jesus. What's the difference? Well, I wonder if Peter could have known, the difference is, I can see something Judas never let himself see, I guess, that Jesus knew I was going to sin.
Yeah.
And that he's still there willing to forgive me if I turn back to him. And even though I did the worst thing I can imagine doing, I denied him 3 times when he needed me. He knew I was going to do that, and he still loved me. And so I can still turn back to him. So I wonder if having these words, hard as they must have been, spoken to him ahead of time, might have given Peter a lot of hope later after he fell so badly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I love God. I feel like he works in parallels a lot. And to have two of Jesus's disciples betray him, Judas and Peter, but to see that even though Peter betrayed him, he was still loved by Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was, at its core, very similar, and yet not. And just so that we as Christians can read that and see the parallels of Peter and Judas, but see the different outcomes.
Yeah.
Like, that's really cool.
It is. And I know we're looking ahead to something we haven't read yet, but Judas,
Bible spoilers.
yeah, Bible spoilers, right? Judas dies by his own hand.
Right.
He does.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, like, yes, we know Judas is the one that Jesus says he was lost. And so you wonder, like, well, was there hope for Judas? Ultimately, we know Judas locked himself out of hope because he made a choice. And God didn't strike him with that. He made a choice.
Yeah.
If I look at God's character, what do I see? I see a God who forgives. He forgives a friend who denies him 3 times. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So would he have forgiven Judas? Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, of course he would have forgiven Judas if Judas had asked for forgiveness and had repented. But who made that choice? Ultimately, Judas chose not to seek reconciliation like Peter ends up doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And speaking more into what Hope mentioned with parallels, even more Bible spoilers if you haven't read it, we see later on in the Gospels as Jesus is hung up on the cross that he is hung between 2 thieves. One thief decides to mock Jesus, and the other one asks for repentance.
Yeah.
And looking at that in comparison to the 2 people that betrayed Jesus, it almost feels like those sentiments are almost on the same level, where, you know, you have the thief on one side of Christ that decides to mock Jesus, being very similar to Judas, in that Judas went against Jesus and betrayed Jesus and did not seek reconciliation, whereas the thief on the other side of Jesus, while hanging on the cross, did seek reconciliation despite what he had done.
Yeah.
And so that, in a sense, is very similar to Peter, where Peter, you know, recognizes, hey, I did this awful thing. I betrayed one of the people that I love the most in life. In fact, the most important person in my life at this point. And I can seek forgiveness in him. And so it's just that it just reinforces the fact that, you know, we always have a choice, no matter where we're coming from, no matter what we do. We can always seek repentance, and in that humbling of ourselves, Jesus says, yes, come back to me. I want you to come back to me.
Yes. This is a question, and it's kind of going back to the beginning of the passage we read from, but I don't think that I could tell you what the answer is. So I'm going to ask you. What do you think Jesus is talking about when he says, now is the Son of Man glorified? I've read a couple different perspectives on this, and I could probably share those, but I'm just curious, like, if you had any thoughts on, like, what is the now? Why is it he's saying now is the Son of Man glorified?
I have always sort of interpreted that as they're at the Last Supper and Jesus has washed their feet and like all of those things, and it's kind of the final I don't know, it sort of feels like this in a weird way, this like beginning of the end, and like sort of the and triumphal doesn't feel like the correct word, but it is. It's like the triumphal beginning of the conquering that Jesus is going to be doing.
Oh, yeah.
And so like now the Son of Man is glorified kind of in his laying down of himself, his most like dying a physical death, his washing of feet, his eating of a meal, which a God wouldn't need to do, like all of it, like hygiene, food, physical death, pain, like all of those kinds of things that Jesus had to go through. Same with him just being born. Like he was born as a baby in a womb.
Yeah.
And that didn't have to happen, but he became a Son of Man, and to be fully glorified in that, and then God being glorified in him.
Yeah.
And I also feel like all of, not to jump too far ahead yet again, but this to me has always stuck out as the most human that you see Jesus, of him just sobbing in the garden and crying out to God that he doesn't have to do this terrible thing. Like that, there's nothing else to me that feels more like, that's me. I don't want to do what God asks me to do sometimes, or I can't imagine. And like, that's such a pithy level compared to what he's about to go through, the sheer torture that he's about to go through. But that's like, to me, where I both see him. Like, I don't know, when I've read it, I feel like I see him both as so human and so God.
Yes. Yeah, but yes, for good reason. Because this is what God does when he shows up on the scene, is he lives this life that Jesus has lived. And he gives of himself. Like, God showing up doesn't look like a king showing up to slay all his enemies. It looks like him showing up to give his life for his enemies. People like Judas, people like Peter.
And then, I mean, he says, a new command I give to you, love one another. And how much more, I mean, I want to talk more about that because, oh my gosh, but even just like on that level of, this is the first time he's giving them this command, love one another. How much more loving is it than what Jesus did for us?
Yeah.
I just think that's amazing.
And it's interesting, too, that he says, a new commandment I give to you.
Yeah.
I don't know if that word ever hit me in a different way, except for when I was reading it for this podcast today. Because I thought to myself, is that really new, though? Hasn't, like, you're supposed, like, loving your neighbors an important thing all along in the Bible. But I thought about it from this perspective. A new commandment I give to you, Jesus says, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another. Yeah. They're about to see an example of love that they have never.
We always hear the love your neighbor as yourself, or do unto others as you would have them do, put others before you and then love yourself. But the like, love as I have loved you. Oh, I'm going to get emotional because I'm like, I can't do that. But I have to, and his love. Someone else talk before I cry because his love is too great.
No, it's true.
Yeah, it seems as if Jesus is making a declaration that he is going to follow through within the ultimate act of sacrifice and the ultimate act of love, and that this new commandment, I'm able to forge this new commandment in that by the time that I die, by the time that I rise again, I am able to forge a new commandment with you, in that you are saved through my blood. And by following through with that, the commitment that I need you to follow through with is that you love everyone else in the same way that I am loving you now by sacrificing myself.
If we could just stop on the words Jesus says, plain, simple words. He says here, and he says on the Sermon on the Mount, like, praise God we have the whole Bible because
Mhm.
we need that whole context. But I think about, the desert island passages that if you could have only one part of the Bible to read for the rest of your life on a desert island,
Yeah.
if you had this whole sermon that
Yeah.
Jesus gives his disciples at the end of the Last Supper,
Yeah.
you would read words that would challenge you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Because who can say, all right, I'll add that to the list. What's next,
Right?
Jesus? It's like, I'll be working on this till the day I go home to be
He's-
with the Lord.
That he says that by your loving one another, everyone will know that you are my disciples. By the way that you love one another. Like, it's not just love one another as I have loved you. And through your loving of one another, they will know that I loved you first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because who else?
Hmm.
Nobody else does that. No other religion is like that. Like, that through sheer love, that's how you know.
Yeah.
That's how you know you're saved.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you know that you're walking like Jesus. That's how others know that there's something different about you, is through love.
Hmm. It really is the whole story. Like, it wraps it all up. It really does.
Yeah.
Because Jesus' love is very compelling is a small word for it, but like
Yeah.
it's a very small word for it. Hardly encompasses it.
But is a great word for it at the
Yeah,
same time.
True,
Yeah.
because you see it and it moves you.
Yes.
You're like, wait, who would do that?
Yeah.
Why would you do that for me?
Yeah.
What? I'm not good. Why would you do that? I think about
Absolutely.
so I have a 3-year-old and she asks questions and she learns things at kids' church. And so she'll say, Jesus died on the cross for me, Daddy? And I'll say, yes, he did die on the cross for you. And then she'll say, why? And I'll say, because he loves you. And then what's the next question she asks? Why?
Yeah.
Why does he love me? Now, I could say, well, because he just does. And that'd be true. But recently I learned what my answer to that question is. I tell her, I say, honey, because he's good.
Ugh.
He loves you because he's good.
Yeah.
That's just who he is.
Yeah.
And I love that I know I can say that to anybody.
Yeah.
Somebody's like, well, why would God, why would he die on the cross for me?
Why
Because
should
he
he
loves you?
appreciate
Why would he love me?
Yeah.
Because he's good. Because he's good. And he created you.
Yeah.
And he's good.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
It's like, well, he loves you because he understands that the world's a hard place and that you've had a really tough go of it. No, he loves you because he's good.
Yeah.
He is so good and he loves you.
Yeah.
And he made you and he loves you. So that's the one we love about, that's the one we read about here. And he shows us that love in such a tangible way because we can't deny it, the power of what we see him do on the cross.
Yeah.
And wow, can't we be like Peter and take encouragement from it? Because we know that these words are true of us too, that he could say to any one of us, I know you think you're committed, but you're going to make big mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to turn your back on me. And yet, he laid down his life for us, and he was risen for us, and he loves us. Thank you for joining us for If That Makes Sense, the family life podcast about what life is really like as a young adult following Jesus. If you enjoy the show, please send it to a friend. Your genuine appreciation of the show is the best way for word to get out. And it would make our day if you left us a rating and a review wherever you found this episode. Family Life has more great original podcasts that you can check out at familylife.org/podcast. Thanks again, and we look forward to having you along for the next one.